The first thing I noticed that morning wasn't the smell of fresh-cut cedar or the thin sunlight spilling through the workshop windowsill, was the sound of boots on my concrete floor. Heavy boots. The kind of sound that doesn't belong to me, my crew, or anyone who has the right to be there. My hands froze over the dovetail joint I'd been chiseling. The wood grained sharp and perfect under my fingertips. I turned my head slowly, and there she was, HOA Karen in all her self-appointed glory, standing in the middle of my private workshop as if she owned the place. She was flanked by two equally smug strangers in matching polo shirts with a printed HOA enforcement logo I had never seen before. My pulse spiked. This wasn't just nosy curiosity. This was trespassing, bold and deliberate. Karen's eyes scanned the racks of hand tools, the stacked walnut planks, the lathe turning lazily in the corner. Her smirk told me she thought she had the upper hand, like she was walking into a courtroom she already controlled. This structure, she began, her voice dripping with mock authority, is in violation of Community Code 14B. Unpermitted outbuildings are subject to removal. Consider this your official inspection. I blinked once, twice, then laughed a slow, sharp sound that made her frown deepen. That's funny, I said, setting my chisel down with exaggerated care. Because I'm not in your HOA, never have been. And you have no legal jurisdiction here. The man to her left, clearly trying to play the role of muscle, shifted uncomfortably. Karen didn't miss a beat. All properties within the perimeter are subject to HOA oversight, she snapped. Your refusal to acknowledge it doesn't make you exempt. That was when my wife stepped into the doorway. Emily's presence filled the space, not just because she's a tall, composed woman with the kind of gaze that can strip a person to the bone, but because of who she is. Federal investigator. 15 years working cases that made grown men fold like cheap lawn chairs. Her badge was clipped to her belt, visible enough for the three intruders to notice. That's an interesting claim, she said coolly, considering this property sits outside your HOA's legal boundaries by over 200 feet, and considering the trespassing statute in this state carries a fine of up to $5,000 and a criminal record. For all three of you. Karen's bravado faltered, but not enough to retreat. She gestured vaguely at a clipboard in her hand. We have the authority to inspect for safety hazards. Emily took a single step forward, the concrete amplifying the sound of her boots. Then I'll need to see the municipal inspection warrant you brought with you. You do have one, correct? The silence was almost satisfying. The man with the polo shirt glanced at Karen. The other shifted his weight toward the door, clearly regretting the morning's choice of company. Karen's lips tightened, and for the first time, she looked like she might crack. But then she tried again, turning toward me with that oily confidence. We've had complaints from the neighborhood about noise, smells, and dust from your operations. We are entitled to investigate. My patience frayed. You mean my woodworking business? The one licensed by the county? The one featured in the local paper last month for restoring historical furniture? That one. I didn't raise my voice, but the anger sat hot in my chest. Emily's eyes never left Karen as she reached for her phone. Names, please. Full legal names. And while you're at it, the address for your HOA office. We're filing a trespass report with the county sheriff today. That was the first real crack in Karen's armor. She took half a step back, her eyes darting toward the open door as if she could undo the last 5 minutes by walking out quietly. That's when the twist dropped, because Emily's phone wasn't just a prop. She had already been recording from the moment she stepped in, catching every word, every fabricated claim, every admission of entering without permission. And because Emily works federal, she knows exactly how to make sure that recording becomes a permanent public record. What Karen didn't know yet was that the footage would also reveal something else. On the back wall of my shop, just beyond the frame of their fake inspection charade, sat 3 antique rifles mounted in a glass display case. They're legally registered, heirlooms from my grandfather's service in World War II. During their little inspection, one of Karen's sidekicks had tried to reach for the latch, clearly snooping for something they could twist into a violation. That image hand on the glass, eyes scanning for value, would play a starring role in what came next. Emily caught it all. The confrontation stretched in the air like the pause before a storm breaks. Karen, still trying to salvage control, lifted her chin and said, "You'll be hearing from our legal team." Emily's voice was steel. "So will you. Only difference is ours actually exists." The room felt charged. The scent of cedar and machine oil mixing with something sharper, the knowledge that this was going to end very badly for them. And I was more than fine with that. Emily didn't have to ask twice. The second she said, "Names." The taller polo shirt guy muttered something about a dentist appointment and put his hand on the door. Emily angled her body just enough to block the exit with a polite smile that wasn't polite at all. "Leaving would be a mistake before we get this cleared up," she said, her thumb still hovering over the recording app. "This is an active trespass in progress. You're safer staying until the sheriff arrives." The word sheriff landed like a hammer on sheet metal. Karen's mouth twitched, and I could almost hear her calculating new stories, new angles, new ways to twist truth into a weapon. Outside, a delivery truck rolled slowly past my fence. The driver, a guy I recognized who always waved at my dog, slowed as he spotted the strangers and the ridiculous HOA enforcement polos. He raised his eyebrows at me through the open garage bay. "Like, you okay?" I gave a tight nod. Emily was already on the county contact list for a fraud task force. She tapped a single name, Deputy Cass Heron, and hit call. "Hey Cass," she said calmly when the line clicked. "We've got 3 individuals trespassing in a private workshop, claiming HOA authority beyond their jurisdiction. No warrant, no city IDs. I'm saving the recording to our case archive. Can you send a unit?" A beat of silence. Then Heron's voice, low and focused. "On it. 5 minutes." Karen wasn't done. She squared her shoulders, plastered on that fake public relations smile, and pulled out a packet, an actual printed packet, from her tote bag. "As a courtesy," she said, handing me the sheets, "the violations we've observed: unpermitted electrical, hazardous tool storage, and unregistered business signage. You'll want to correct those before the next inspection." The packet looked official at a glance, laid out in committee-looking fonts with seals I didn't recognize. But right there in the header, in tiny gray letters, the whole scam gave itself away. Community Improvement Compliance Initiative, LLC. Not a municipal agency. Not even a non-profit. A for-profit company with a made-up title designed to look governmental from 10 feet away. I flipped the packet over and found a fine schedule. Their plan was simple: drown me in paperwork, fabricate fines, and push hard until I either paid or folded. Emily tilted her head, reading over my shoulder. "An LLC pretending to be an enforcement agency," she murmured. "That's new. And stupid." She raised the camera of her phone to get a clean shot of the header. Karen tried to snatch the packet back. Emily kept it out of reach, her expression immovable. "Evidence now," she said. "You can request it through discovery later." A small shape darted across the threshold and bumped my leg. Scout, our dog, had woken from his bed under the workbench, yawning as if this whole thing were inconveniencing his nap schedule. He gave a single huff at the intruders and then leaned comfortably against me. The taller polo shirt guy flinched like Scout was a wolf. Karen rolled her eyes with performative patience, as though we were the ones causing a scene. "You can posture all you want," she snapped at Emily, "but this workshop is non-compliant, and the neighbors are angry. We're doing what we're authorized to do." Emily's reply was so calm it made the words sting more. "You're standing in a private commercial space with a fraudulent packet, wearing shirts that imply public authority. Authorization doesn't come from your imagination. It comes from the law." Sirens whispered somewhere in the distance, growing nearer. I breathed for the first time since the chiseling sound had stopped. My brain rebooted enough to notice how the sunlight had shifted across the floor, catching dust motes that hung like glitter in a parade. The day had been ordinary 15 minutes ago. Now it felt like the beginning of something precise and irreversible. My phone buzzed with a text. It was from Mrs. Alvarez, our 80-year-old neighbor who sees everything and forgets nothing. Her message was a single sentence, typed with fierce clarity. "I have them on my ring since they parked in my driveway. Want it?" I looked up at Emily. She read my screen, grinned, and typed back, "Yes, please. Send the link." The siren eased away as the patrol SUV slowed outside our gate. A moment later, Deputy Heron walked in, the kind of officer who makes it obvious why people choose service as a life. Tall, focused, with eyes that took in the whole room in one sweep. He nodded once at Emily, twice at me, and then to the three strangers whose bravado was dissolving like sugar in hot tea. "Morning," he said evenly. "Whose property is this?" "Mine," I said. "It's a licensed workshop. And you invited these folks in?" "Nope." He looked at Karen. "Names?" Karen launched into her script. "We're conducting a compliance inspection on behalf of the Homeowners Association. We've had multiple complaints." Heron held up a hand. "I asked for names. We'll discuss complaints after." Karen gave hers. Then the two men hesitantly gave theirs. Heron wrote them down. "Now," he continued, "do you have a municipal inspection warrant or city credentials?" The shorter polo guy pulled a folded paper from his pocket like it was a magic trick. Heron took it, unfolded it, and stared. You could see the exact moment his face shifted from professional neutral to a kind of incredulous annoyance. "This is a letter you wrote yourselves," he said, tapping the fake seal. "Not a warrant. Not even close." Emily held out her phone. "Their packet is from a private LLC masquerading as enforcement. I have continuous video of their entry and statements." Heron nodded. "Please email that to me." Then to Karen, "Ma'am, at this moment you and your associates are being detained for investigation of criminal trespass and potential impersonation of a public officer. Please place your hands where I can see them." Pride did something strange to people when it met reality. Karen didn't put up her hands. She looked down her nose at Heron and said, "I know the mayor." And right on cue, the twist none of us planned walked in through the open bay door. It wasn't the mayor. It was my brother, Nate, smelling faintly like jet fuel and good coffee, still in his airport maintenance polo with a name tag skewed sideways. He'd stopped by to borrow my orbital sander for the boat seats he was refinishing, a thing he does when he's too anxious to sit still. He took in the scene: Emily, me, the deputy, three strangers, and his eyes landed on the shorter polo guy. He stilled. "That one," he said quietly to Heron, pointing. "He's on probation. Name's Cole Vickers. Stole catalytic converters from our airport employee lot. I was at the arraignment 2 months ago." The shorter man went pale, and not because my overhead lights are unflattering. Karen sputtered. "This is irrelevant." Heron keyed his radio with 2 clipped words, then turned to Vickers. "Sir, for everyone's safety, keep your hands visible." Emily's phone chimed again. Mrs. Alvarez had sent her ring clip a wide-angle view of Karen's SUV sliding right up to Mrs. Alvarez's driveway without permission. All 3 of them piling out with clipboards and purpose, striding straight toward my fence line through a gap in the hedge. They hadn't even come from the street entrance. They'd cut the corner like teenagers sneaking into a movie. Heron watched the footage twice. Then he watched the part where Vickers touched the latch on my heirloom display case. His jaw worked once. "We're done here," he said, and his voice carried the weight of it. The second unit arrived, and for a few minutes the workshop became a quiet choreography of steps and statements and careful hand motions. Heron read rights with the patience of someone who has never once mixed words with power. Karen argued the whole time, her voice rising at the edges, claiming it was all a misunderstanding, that she had everyone's best interest at heart, that we'd thank her later when she cleaned up the neighborhood standards. Vickers tried to slink behind a shelf and made it 3 steps before the second deputy clipped cuffs on his wrists. The taller polo guy kept whispering, I didn't know, like those 3 words would unsay the last 20 minutes. As Karen was escorted to the door, she turned back and tossed one more grenade over her shoulder. "We'll sue," she hissed, eyes hot with a rage that wasn't about justice but about losing the stage she'd been performing on. "You people think you can hide behind legal jargon and special favors. We'll ruin you." Emily smiled with something almost kind. "You already tried." After they left, the silence in the workshop felt honest again, full of ordinary Sound Scout's nails ticking across the floor, the soft whir of the dust extractor still running. I put the chisel down like it was sacred. Nate exhaled the breath he'd been holding. "You okay?" he asked. "We're okay," I said. "She's not." That might have been the end of it, but this wasn't a movie that cuts to black after the arrest. This was real life, and real life has paperwork. Emily spent the afternoon building a wall of facts, cross-referencing the LLC registration, pulling court records on Vickers, and calling 2 neighbors whose driveway